banished by the Galactic Council, humanity forged an empire of its own. Commander Vex Aura Tool of the Galactic Council security fleet stared at the holographic projection of the small blue planet. Such an insignificant speck in the vast cosmos, yet somehow the source of the Council's greatest headache in 7 millennia. "You can't be serious," Vex Aura said, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession as she addressed High Counselor Zix Lor. "You want to banish an entire species?" Zix Lor's tentacles rippled with irritation. "Do I look like I'm making a joke, Commander? Have you read the reports?" "Of course I have read them," Vex Aura snapped. "The humans' file was thicker than most species' entire historical archives. But exile is unprecedented." "So are they," Zix Lor countered, tapping a tentacle on the display to bring up footage from the Proxima incident. "Look at this. They were supposed to be negotiating a peace treaty, but instead they reprogrammed the Drell Empire's security network and turned their battle drones into what humans call disco balls," Vex Aura finished, "while simultaneously hacking their financial system and donating their war chest to orphanages across 3 sectors. "Precisely," said Zix Lor. "And remember the Morax diplomatic summit?" Vex Aura suppressed a chuckle. "When Ambassador Dexon tried to intimidate them by shape-shifting into that dragon creature from their mythology. And the human delegates simply pulled out what they call a marshmallow and asked if anyone wanted to make s'mores. The Morax Confederation withdrew from the Council in humiliation." Vex Aura moved to the viewport of the massive Council station. Earth hung like a blue marble in the distance. "They are just unpredictable, but creative and adaptable." "They are dangerous," Zix Lor insisted. "Their planet experienced more technological advancement in the last century than most species achieve in a millennium. Their media glorifies rebellion. Their most revered historical figures are troublemakers. Even their scientific progress stems from people who questioned established authority. So, what's the plan? Just wall off their entire solar system? The boundary barrier will contain them until they either destroy themselves or mature enough to rejoin galactic society," Zix Lor explained. "The vote is already done, Commander. 16,422 council members for, only 3 against." "Let me guess," Vex Aura said dryly. "The Terral voted against it?" "Of course. They find humans charming. The Terral would adopt a supernova if they could." Zix Lor waved a dismissive tentacle. "Your fleet will establish the boundary barrier at the edge of their solar system tomorrow. The humans will be informed that they have been quarantined for their own safety. They won't believe that. It doesn't matter what they believe. The barrier will hold." Vex Aura wasn't so sure, but she knew better than to argue further. "Yes, High Counselor." As Zix Lor floated away, Vex Aura turned to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Krex, a tall, spindly being with metallic skin that reflected the starlight in iridescent patterns. "Krex, we need to prepare the fleet. And someone needs to deliver the message to the humans." Krex's faceplates shifted into what passed for a grimace among his kind. "Delivering bad news to humans? I'd rather swim in the acid lakes of Vorsoon." "Scared, Lieutenant?" Vex Aura teased. "Terrified," Krex admitted without shame. "You have seen what they did to the Plurixian Armada, right? The Plurixians threatened to bombard their planet unless they surrendered. The humans responded by hacking their communications and broadcasting something called 'Never Gonna Give You Up' on every frequency for 3 days straight. Half the Plurixian command staff resigned." Vex Aura laughed despite herself. "Fine. I will deliver the message personally. Assemble the fleet and begin barrier preparations." 12 hours later, Vex Aura stood before the United Earth Council in New Geneva. The human representatives stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to outrage too. Was that amusement? From the American representative? "Let me get this straight," said Representative Amara Okafor of the African Union, leaning forward. Your Galactic Council is putting us in timeout? The entire human race? The official term is protective isolation, Vexora replied diplomatically. Call it whatever fancy name you want, sweetie, drawled Representative Jackson Blackwell of the North American Coalition. It's still a cosmic restraining order. The barrier will remain in place until humanity demonstrates sufficient maturity, Vexora continued, trying to maintain her composure. Maturity? Representative Lina Zhang of the Asian Confederation stood up, her voice sharp. We have eliminated poverty on our planet, developed clean energy, cured most diseases, and established colonies on Mars and Europa. Meanwhile, your precious council still can't agree on standardized docking procedures after 8,000 years. Vexora's skin flushed azure with embarrassment. The human had a point. The docking protocol debate was entering its fourth millennium with no resolution in sight. The decision is final, she said firmly. The barrier goes up tomorrow. It will allow communication but prevent physical passage in either direction. And if we try to break through? Asked Representative Karam Nasser of the Middle Eastern Alliance, his voice dangerously quiet. The barrier is powered by 13 quasars harnessed through dimensional folding, Vexora stated. It cannot be breached with your current technology. The room fell silent. Then, to Vexora's surprise, Representative Blackwell started laughing. "Oh, honey," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "You really shouldn't have told us that." "Excuse me?" "Nothing says figure out how to break this to a human like it cannot be breached," explained Representative Okafor with a wry smile. "You have just issued a challenge to an entire planet of people who crossed oceans because someone said it couldn't be done." Vexora felt a chill run down her spine. The Council's decision stands. You have 24 hours to recall any off-world citizens to your solar system. As she turned to leave, Representative Zhang called after her, "Commander, when you see us again, and you will remember this moment." Back on her flagship, Vexora found Lieutenant Krex waiting anxiously. "How did they take it?" he asked. "Exactly as expected," she replied. "They are angry, defiant," and she hesitated. "And what, Commander?" "And I think we might have made a terrible mistake." Krex's metallic brow ridges rose. "You think 16,000 council members are wrong?" "I think," Vexora said carefully, "that we just told the most stubborn species in the galaxy that there's something they can't do. But the barrier will buy us time, nothing more," Vexora interrupted. "Mark my words, Krex. This isn't the end of humanity in galactic affairs. It's just the beginning of a new chapter." As the massive fleet moved into position around Earth's solar system, Vexora gazed one last time at the small blue planet. Such an insignificant speck, yet somehow she couldn't shake the feeling that the Council had just awakened a sleeping giant. And she wasn't entirely sure whose side she was on. 50 years passed since the barrier went up. 50 years of silence from the quarantined solar system. 50 years during which the Galactic Council congratulated itself on its wise decision and promptly forgot about the troublesome humans. Pelvac, chief monitor of the Sol Containment Zone, had the most boring job in the galaxy. Every day for 20 years he'd sat in the same chair, in the same monitoring station, staring at the same readings from the boundary barrier. Nothing ever changed. Another thrilling day in paradise, he muttered to his assistant, Traz Ka, a young brill with vibrant purple fur, who was still enthusiastic about her first deep space assignment. "I have been reviewing the energy signatures from the human system," Traz Ka said, her 6 limbs moving rapidly across different control panels. "There's something odd about them." "There's always something odd about them," Pelvac replied, not bothering to look up from his game of Zort, a puzzle that had kept him occupied for the last 5 years. "Humans are odd. That's why they are in there and we are out here." "No, I mean really odd," Traz Ka insisted. The barrier is registering unusual fluctuations at regular intervals. Almost like. Like what? Pelvac finally glanced up. Like they are testing it. Pelvac snorted. They have been testing it for 50 years. The barrier holds. End of story. At that moment, an alert chimed. Then another, and another, until the quiet monitoring station was filled with the cacophony of 1,000 warning signals. What in the 7 moons of Calthor? Pelvac leapt to his feet, knocking over his precious Zort game. The main screen showed a catastrophic failure spreading across the boundary barrier, section by section like dominoes falling. That's impossible, Pelvac shouted. The barrier is powered by 13 quasars through dimensional folding. Yes, Traz-Ka finished for him, her fingers flying across the controls. And somehow they have created a resonance cascade that's collapsing the entire system. We need to alert the Council. We need reinforcements. We need. He never finished the sentence. The entire monitoring station shuddered as something massive dropped out of what the humans called hyperspace directly in front of them. It was a ship. At least Pelvac thought it was a ship. It didn't look like any vessel he'd ever seen. It was sleek, almost predatory in design, with strange glowing lines pulsing along its hull. And it was enormous, dwarfing their monitoring station like a Vorlax whale next to a minnow. By the eternal stars, whispered Traz-Ka. What is that? The answer came moments later when their communications system activated on its own. A holographic figure appeared in the center of their command deck, a human female with dark skin and silver hair, wearing what appeared to be a uniform of some kind. Greetings from the United Earth Alliance, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I am Admiral Imani Okoro of the UEA Pathfinder. It appears your barrier had a slight malfunction. Hope we didn't startle you. Pelvac could only gape in shock. Traz-Ka recovered more quickly. How did you breach the barrier? She asked. Oh, that old thing? Admiral Okoro waved dismissively. We could have broken through decades ago, but we decided to use the time to innovate instead. Thanks for the uninterrupted research and development period. Very productive. Pelvac found his voice at last. This is an outrage. The Council will. The Council will what? Interrupted the Admiral, her smile vanishing. Put us in timeout again? We are not here to start a war, Monitor Pelvac. We are here to rejoin galactic society. On our terms. That's not how it works, Pelvac sputtered. It is now, replied Admiral Okoro. While you have been containing us, we have been busy. We have colonized our entire system. We have developed technologies your council hasn't even imagined. And we have made friends. Friends? Traz-Ka echoed. What friends could you possibly have made from inside the barrier? The Admiral's smile returned. You didn't really think a barrier that allows communication would keep us isolated, did you? The Terrell have been quite chatty. So have the Krith, the Mondoshoans, and about 30 other species who felt the Council's decision was short-sighted. Pelvac collapsed back into his chair. Treason, he muttered. All of them. Traitors. Or visionaries, suggested Admiral Okoro. Depends on your perspective. Now, we will be heading to Galactic Central to present our case for readmission and to introduce some of our technological innovations to the broader community. We'd be honored if you'd accompany us. You mean as prisoners? Pelvac said bitterly. The Admiral laughed. Passengers, Monitor. We are not barbarians, though I can't promise the Council will be as understanding when they learn you let us escape. That thought had already occurred to Pelvac. Failure was not treated kindly in Council space. Fine, he said, rising with what dignity he could muster. But I warn you, human. The Council will not be pleased. Oh, I'm counting on it. Admiral Okoro replied with a wink. Trazka, is it? Would you prefer to stay here or join us? I have heard the Brill have a natural aptitude for hyperspace mathematics. Our science officer would love to compare notes. Trazka's ears perked up, despite herself. You know about Brill mathematics? We have had 50 years to study every species in the galaxy. Your people's multi-dimensional calculus is particularly impressive. Trazka glanced at Pelvac, then back at the Admiral. I would be interested in seeing your ship. Traitor, hissed Pelvac. Explorer, Trazka corrected him. Isn't that what we are supposed to be? The journey to Galactic Central took a fraction of the time it should have. The UEA Pathfinder moved through space in ways that defied conventional physics, slipping between dimensional layers like a fish through water. On the bridge, Pelvac watched in reluctant fascination as the human crew operated with seamless efficiency. Some weren't even fully human anymore, with cybernetic enhancements or subtle genetic modifications. They called themselves augmented, and they interfaced with the ship's systems in ways that seemed almost mystical. Your chief engineer, Pelvac said to Admiral Okoro, pointing to a human with glowing circuitry visible beneath his skin. What happened to him? Nothing happened to Naveen, the Admiral replied. He chose that path. Neural interfacing allows him to feel the ship's systems as extensions of his own body. Your species has changed, Pelvac observed. We have evolved, she corrected. Not all of us choose augmentation. Some remain fully organic, others embrace synthetic enhancements. The choice is individual, as it should be. And you? He asked. Are you enhanced? Admiral Okoro's eyes glimmered with amusement. In my line of work, it's better not to answer that question directly. As they approached Galactic Central, the massive space station that served as the Council's headquarters, Pelvac expected alarms, defensive maneuvers, perhaps even weapons fire. Instead, they were greeted by a welcoming committee. What in the void? He whispered as they docked alongside ships bearing the markings of the Terrell, the Krith, and dozens of other Council species. Admiral Okoro smiled that enigmatic smile again. Like I said, we made friends. The galaxy is changing, Monitor Pelvac. The question is, will the Council change with it, or be left behind? As they disembarked, a familiar figure waited in the docking bay, Commander Vexora Tool, now with gray streaks in her fur and the insignia of a Grand Admiral on her uniform. Commander Vexora, Admiral Okoro greeted her warmly. Or should I say, Grand Admiral? Imani Okoro, Vexora replied with a nod. You were only a cadet when we last met. You remember me? I made it a point to remember every human I encountered, Vexora said. I suspected we'd meet again someday. Pelvac looked between them in confusion. You know each other? Grand Admiral, this human has violated the boundary barrier. They all have. A barrier that should never have been erected, Vexora said firmly. The Council is about to learn that lesson the hard way. And as they walked towards the Council chambers, Pelvac had the distinct feeling that the galaxy would never be the same again. The Grand Council chamber was a marvel of galactic architecture. A vast dome of transparent alloy revealed the star-studded cosmos above, while thousands of delegates from across the galaxy sat in concentric rings, each tier representing different alliances, confederations, and empires. At the center stood the High Council podium, where the 9 most powerful members of galactic society determined the fate of worlds. Today, those 9 faces displayed varying degrees of shock, outrage, and disbelief as Admiral Imani Okoro stood before them, flanked by Grand Admiral Vexora and representatives from 30 different species. High Councilor Zixlor, now ancient even by his species standards, his tentacles gray and withered, sputtered with indignation. This is an abomination. Humans standing in the Council chamber. Guards. Arrest these escapees. The Council Guard, an elite force of the galaxy's finest warriors, didn't move. "They won't obey that order, Zixlor," said Vexora calmly. "They answer to me now." "Treason," shrieked Zixlor. "Mutiny. I will have you executed, Vexora." A new voice joined the conversation, smooth, melodious, and amused. "Oh, do shut up, Zixlor. You have been threatening to execute everyone who disagrees with you for 3 centuries. It's gotten rather tiresome." All eyes turned to Counselor DRX of the Terrell, a tall, elegant being with feathers that shimmered with iridescent colors. Unlike the other counselors, DRX seemed completely at ease with the human presence. "You," Zixlor pointed an accusing tentacle. "You have been conspiring with them all along." "Conspiring implies secrecy," DRX replied with a casual wave of a feathered hand. "I have been quite open about my communication with Earth, as have the Krith, the Mondoshawans, and many others. We simply chose not to announce it to those who wouldn't approve." DRX's eyes gleamed mischievously. "Which was mainly you, Zixlor." Admiral Okoro stepped forward. "Esteemed counselors, I come before you not as an escapee or a rebel, but as an ambassador. The United Earth Alliance wishes to rejoin galactic society, to share our advancements, and to forge new partnerships across the stars." "Advancements?" scoffed Counselor Grax of the Buvoid hierarchy, his bulbous eyes narrowing. "What advancements could you possibly have made in isolation?" A subtle smile played across Admiral Okoro's lips. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." She nodded to a human officer standing nearby, a woman with intricate circuitry embedded in her temples, Commander Sasha Nazari, the Pathfinder's science officer. Nazari tapped a sequence into her wrist device. Instantly, the center of the council floor transformed as a holographic projection appeared, but unlike any hologram the council had seen before. It was solid, tangible, with depth and substance that defied conventional physics. "Hard light technology," explained Nazari. "A perfect marriage of energy and matter. We have used it to build colonies in the harshest environments of our system, create medical devices that can repair damaged tissue at the cellular level, and develop construction techniques that can raise cities in days rather than years." Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the chamber. "That's just the beginning," continued Admiral Okoro. "We have mastered quantum entanglement communication, allowing instantaneous transmissions across any distance. We have developed bioneural interfaces that allow direct mind-to-machine connection. And we have created a new form of faster-than-light travel that doesn't rely on traditional hyperspace corridors." "Impossible," declared Counselor Vrex of the Pluton Confederacy. "No species could advance so rapidly without outside assistance." "No species that plays by your rules," corrected Okoro. "You gave us the greatest gift possible when you isolated us counselors. You freed us from your bureaucracy, your ancient restrictions, your fear of change. We had no choice but to innovate or perish." Zixlor's tentacles writhed with fury. "You expect us to believe that you developed all this technology on your own? In mere decades?" "Necessity is the mother of invention," quoted Okoro, an old human saying. "When you cut us off from galactic trade and resources, we had to become self-sufficient. When you denied us access to established hyperspace routes, we had to find our own paths between the stars." "And that's not all they did," added Grand Admiral Vexora, stepping forward. "While the Council was busy maintaining the status quo, humans were forming alliances. Quiet trade agreements with the Terrell, cultural exchanges with the Krith, scientific collaborations with the Brill." "The Brill?" Zixlor turned to the Brill representative, who shuffled nervously under his gaze. "You betrayed the Council?" The Brill delegate, an elder named Zor Vak, straightened his posture. "We chose progress over stagnation, Counselor. The humans offered us new perspectives on multidimensional mathematics that revolutionized our understanding of spatial geometry. What would you have us do?" reject knowledge because of your fear. Before Zixlor could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A squad of security officers rushed in, led by a flustered Drell commander. High counselors. The Drell shouted. We have a situation. Human ships are appearing throughout council space. Hundreds of them, materializing without warning. A wave of panic swept through the chamber. Delegates rose from their seats, voices raised in alarm. Admiral Okoro remained perfectly calm. There's no need for concern. Those ships are part of our diplomatic corps. They are establishing embassies at key locations throughout the galaxy. We believe in making a good first impression. This is an invasion, Zixlor declared. If we wanted to invade, Okoro replied coolly, we wouldn't have announced ourselves. We certainly wouldn't be standing here asking for peaceful reintegration. She speaks the truth, confirmed Vex Aura. I have seen their capabilities firsthand. If humanity wanted war, this chamber would already be under their control. A heavy silence fell over the council. For the first time in millennia, the highest authority in the galaxy found itself at a crossroads, facing a power they could neither control nor fully comprehend. It was Councillor DRX who broke the silence. I move that we recognize the United Earth Alliance as a sovereign entity with all the rights and privileges of full council membership. Seconded, said the Krith Councillor immediately. You can't be serious, Zixlor protested. They violated the boundary barrier. They infiltrated council space. They did exactly what any of us would have done in their position, interrupted a new voice. All eyes turned to Councillor Thrall of the Mezari, one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. The ancient being's crystalline form glimmered in the starlight as they rose from their seat. For too long. Councillor Thrall continued, their voice resonating like wind through caves. This council has governed through fear and control rather than wisdom and cooperation. We isolated humanity not because they were dangerous, but because they were different. Because they challenged our comfortable assumptions about how the galaxy should work. I, for one, am tired of fearing change. Zixlor's tentacles drooped in disbelief. You too, Thrall. After all our millennia of partnership. It is precisely because of our long friendship that I speak now, Thrall replied gently. The galaxy is evolving, Zixlor. If the Council does not evolve with it, we will become irrelevant. The humans have not come to conquer us, but to join us, to help us grow beyond what we have been. And if we refuse? Zixlor demanded. If we reject their so-called peaceful overtures? Admiral Okoro's expression remained serene, but her voice carried throughout the chamber with unmistakable strength. Then we will continue on our own path. We will trade with those who wish to trade with us. We will share knowledge with those who wish to learn. We will form alliances with those who recognize us as equals. The only difference will be that you will have chosen to exclude yourselves from the future. We are building. Around the chamber, delegates were nodding, murmuring in agreement. The tide was turning, and everyone could feel it. Zixlor looked around desperately, seeking support that was rapidly evaporating. This is madness. They will change everything. That, said DRX with a smile, is precisely the point. The vote, when it came, was decisive. 16,422 council members for, only 3 against, a perfect inversion of the vote that had banished humanity 50 years earlier. As the session adjourned, Admiral Okoro approached Zixlor, who sat alone at the High Council podium, his tentacles limp with defeat. This isn't the end of galactic civilization, Counselor, she said gently. It's a new beginning. Zixlor looked up at her with ancient, tired eyes. You don't understand. We built these structures, these rules, to prevent chaos, to maintain order. And in doing so, you nearly suffocated the very spirit of exploration and discovery that brought us all to the stars in the first place. Okoro replied. There's a middle path, counselor. Order without stagnation, progress without chaos. We'd like you to help us find it. Zixlor blinked in surprise. You want my help? Of course. We may be innovative, but we lack your experience, your perspective, your wisdom. The future we envision includes everyone, even those who once feared us. For the first time in centuries, Zixlor found himself speechless. As Admiral Okoro turned to leave, he called after her. Admiral, when you breached the barrier, how long could you have done that? Okoro paused, then answered with perfect honesty. We could have broken through after 15 years. But we decided to wait until we were ready to change the galaxy, not just rejoin it. As she walked away, Zixlor felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty, yes, but also a flicker of something else. Something that felt remarkably like hope. 2 decades had passed since humanity's dramatic return to galactic society, and Juniel Kex, junior reporter for the Galactic Chronicle, was about to get the biggest story of his career. You want me to interview who? Juniel's 4 hands almost dropped his datapad in shock. Ambassador Mira Patel, repeated his editor Grand Thor, a grizzled Vantar with battle scars from his days covering the SETI uprising. The human who's orchestrating the Renaissance Initiative. Juniel's throat sacs inflated with anxiety. But she never gives interviews. She's turned down journalists from publications 1,000 times more prestigious than ours. Grand Thor's mandibles clicked in amusement. She specifically requested you, kid. Said she liked your piece on the cultural integration of Brill mathematics into mainstream education. But that was just a fluff piece. Apparently not to her. The interview is set for tomorrow at the Renaissance Center. Don't mess it up. The Renaissance Center was the most talked-about location in galactic society, a massive space station at the nexus of 7 hyperspace corridors, jointly developed by humans and a coalition of 30 different species. It served as part university, part research lab, part cultural exchange hub, and part diplomatic neutral ground. As Juniel's shuttle approached, he gasped at the sight. The station defied conventional design, its structure flowing like water frozen in time, with sections that seemed to phase in and out of different dimensional planes. Gardens bloomed in open-air sections where some impossible technology held atmosphere without visible barriers. Ships of all designs docked along its sprawling arms. After passing through security, staffed by a mix of organic beings and advanced synthetics, Juniel was escorted to a garden terrace overlooking a central atrium where beings from across the galaxy mingled freely. Scientists, diplomats, artists, and merchants from 100 worlds engaging in the chaotic dance of cultural exchange. It's something, isn't it? Said a voice behind him. Juniel turned to find a human woman watching him with warm brown eyes. She appeared middle-aged by human standards, with silver streaks in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She wore simple but elegant attire, a flowing tunic of deep blue with subtle geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Ambassador Patel, Juniel stammered, his throat sacs deflating in surprise. I didn't expect, I thought there would be aides or security or… Mira Patel laughed, a sound like musical chimes. 20 years ago, perhaps. But we have come a long way since the days when humans were seen as unpredictable barbarians who needed to be contained, don't you think? She gestured to 2 comfortable chairs overlooking the atrium. Shall we sit? I find these conversations go better with a good view. As they settled in, Juniel fumbled with his recording equipment. Ambassador Patel waited patiently, her expression amused but kind. So Juniel began, trying to sound professional. The Renaissance Initiative is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Many call it the most significant cultural and scientific exchange program in galactic history. What inspired its creation? Isolation, Patel answered simply. When the Council quarantined Earth, They thought they were protecting galactic society from our chaotic influence. What they really did was show us how dangerous isolation can be for any species. She gestured to the atrium below. Look there, see that group? Brill mathematicians working with Krith philosophers and human quantum physicists on a new theory of conscious observation. Or there, Drell engineers and Terrell biologists collaborating on living architecture. This is what happens when we tear down barriers instead of building them. But surely there were challenges, Junil pressed. Cultural misunderstandings, technological incompatibilities. Oh, countless, Patel agreed with a laugh. We still have a committee dedicated solely to preventing diplomatic incidents caused by human humor. Apparently, our concept of sarcasm doesn't translate well to species with hive minds. Junil found himself relaxing as the interview continued. Ambassador Patel spoke with refreshing candor about the Renaissance Initiative's successes and failures, the ongoing resistance from conservative factions within the Council, and the unexpected alliances that had formed in the wake of humanity's return. What about former High Counselor Exiled? Junil asked. Many were surprised when he joined the initiative's advisory board after stepping down from the Council. A smile played across Patel's face. Exiled is a perfect example of what we are trying to achieve. He spent centuries fearing change, only to discover that the right kind of change can reinvigorate rather than threaten. These days, he's one of our most valuable advisors on matters of governance and long-term planning. There's nothing quite like the perspective of someone who's lived for millennia. And what about the rumors of a new form of interstellar travel? Something beyond conventional hyperspace. Patel's eyes twinkled. You have been doing your research, Mr. Kex. Yes, the Fold Drive is more than rumor. It's a collaborative project between human physicists and Mezari dimensional theorists. The first commercial vessels are already being tested. Soon, when travel between any 2 points in the galaxy will take hours instead of weeks. That's revolutionary, Junil said, unable to hide his awe. That's the point, Patel replied. The Renaissance isn't just about sharing what we already know, it's about what we can discover together. And the augmentation technologies. There's been controversy about those. Patel nodded, her expression growing more serious. Biological and technological integration is perhaps our most contentious contribution. Some species embrace it, others find it disturbing. We respect that diversity of opinion. What works for humans may not be appropriate for all species, and we make no attempt to impose our values on others. Choice remains paramount. What about the opposition? Junil asked. There are still factions that consider humanity dangerous. Of course there are, Patel replied with a wry smile. Change is frightening, especially to those who have held power for millennia. The Protectorate Alliance still lobbies for restrictions on human expansion. The Vorlon hierarchy refuses all human technology on their worlds. But every year, their numbers dwindle as the benefits of cooperation become impossible to ignore. A gentle chime sounded, and Patel glanced at her wrist device. Ah, it seems our time is running short. I have a meeting with the Drell ambassador in 20 minutes. Just one more question, if I may, Junil said hurriedly. What's next for humanity? For the Renaissance? Ambassador Patel's gaze turned toward the massive viewport beyond the atrium, where the galaxy stretched out in all its splendor. We've spent the last 20 years rebuilding trust, sharing knowledge, and creating a foundation for cooperation. The next phase is more ambitious. We're calling it the Transcendence Project. Transcendence? Junil's recording device trembled in his hand. What does that mean? It means looking beyond our current limitations, beyond the physical and technological constraints that bind us to this galaxy. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. We've detected signals, Mr. Kex. Patterns in the cosmic background radiation that suggest intelligence beyond our galaxy. The Transcendence Project aims to establish first contact. Junil nearly dropped his device. You're looking for life in other galaxies? But the distances are vast beyond conventional travel, Patel finished for him, but perhaps not beyond unconventional means. The joint human-Mezari dimensional research has yielded fascinating possibilities, theoretical frameworks for communication across intergalactic space. She leaned forward, her voice lowering conspiratorially. Between you and me, we already have preliminary findings. Mathematical sequences embedded in the radiation that cannot be natural. The Transcendence Project will announce them publicly next month, along with our plan to respond. These changes everything, Junil whispered. Again, Patel said with a laugh. That seems to be humanity's particular talent. She stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of farewell. Change isn't something to be feared, Mr. Kex. It's something to be embraced. That's the lesson we learned during our exile. That's the gift we hope to share with the galaxy. As Junil made his way back to his shuttle, his mind reeled with the implications of what he'd learned. His article would make headlines across the galaxy. The Galactic Chronicle would become a household name overnight. In the shuttle's viewport, the Renaissance Center gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of stars. It's a symbol of what could be achieved when fear gave way to curiosity, when isolation surrendered to connection. Junil thought about the journey that had brought humanity from quarantined outcasts to galactic pioneers in just 70 years. He thought about the irony of a punishment that had become the catalyst for the greatest period of advancement the galaxy had ever known. And as his shuttle entered hyperspace, he began to compose in his mind the opening lines of his article. 70 years ago, the Galactic Council made what might have been the greatest mistake in its long history. They told humanity there was something they couldn't do. They built a wall around a species that had spent its entire existence climbing over, tunneling under, or simply demolishing every barrier placed in their path. They created the perfect conditions for innovation, rebelliousness, and determination to flourish. And now the entire galaxy reaps the rewards of their magnificent error. In the observation lounge of the Renaissance Center, Ambassador Mira Patel stood with Admiral Imani Okoro, now in her 90s but still sharp as a blade, watching Junil's shuttle depart. You told him about Transcendence, Okoro observed. The Council will be furious. They wanted to keep it classified until the official announcement. The Council needs to learn that information wants to be free, Patel replied with a mischievous smile. Besides, young Junil deserved a proper scoop. Always the rebel, Okoro said fondly. Some things never change. And some things change dramatically, Patel countered, gesturing to the bustling station around them. Did you ever imagine, back when the barrier went up, that we'd end up here? Admiral Okoro's weathered face broke into a smile. Honestly? Yes. The moment they told us we couldn't leave our solar system, I knew we'd not only break free but transform the galaxy in the process. It's what we do. It's who we are, Patel agreed. Together they watched the stars, the same stars that had once seemed so distant and unattainable, now highways for a civilization reborn through the most human of qualities, the absolute refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. The galaxy had tried to contain humanity. Instead, humanity had set the galaxy free.